Hey, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and this is going to be my team builder in battle for the MPL week number 8. Before we get into any of that, I do have two quick housekeeping things that I want to put out there. First is, I apologize in advance, my computer crashed last week. The Windows partition on my hard drive got corrupted, just like the booting for the Windows. Like, it seems that all of my files were intact for like all my videos, my pictures, my Photoshop files, my music, and whatever. All that was intact, but I had to reinstall Windows onto a new hard drive, and I'm now in the process of getting that machine back up to speed. So long story short, reinstalling OBS for recording. I don't have any of my previous settings or preferences, so hopefully this sounds like the same quality as normal. And then the editing software that I used to use was something called VideoPad. It's like pretty cheap and easy to use. The only problem is that like the licensing for that is like specific to like your one install. It's not like Photoshop or like Office 365 where you have like you can carry it from machine to machine if you need. So basically I don't have that editing software anymore. I'm trying out Vegas Pro because there was a deal for it on Humble Bundle, and so it's pretty cheap. So hopefully it's a decent quality. So thanks for bearing with me as I sort of work out the kinks. That's the first housekeeping item. The second housekeeping item is more Pokemon related. So we made a bunch of major transactions going from week 7 to week 8, and I wanted to quickly go over them here before we go into the battle. So basically we dropped Infernape, Cresselia, Alolan Raichu, and Sceptile for Hawlucha, Latias, Bronzong, and Rapidash. Hawlucha became available because Fizzle dropped it from his team. He had a team with Tapu Lele, so he could kind of abuse Hawlucha in that way. And he also had like a Sand Core Tapu Lele, which is pretty neat. We played him in week 3, if you guys remember. But he dropped it, and I thought that it would be a pretty good opportunity for me to upgrade my Unburdened Sweeper from Sceptile to Hawlucha. This was sort of motivated anyway by so. Let me try and say this a different way. So Infernape and Tapu Koko on paper are a really good offensive core because they kind of beat each other's checks in a lot of ways, and especially because they both have access to U-turn, you can really get your opponent caught into a cycle. But the fact that they have like some mutual weaknesses, mainly being ground, just imposes so much pressure on the rest of my team to have to deal with grounds that it just became the team building I felt like was not very synergistic with this team. So I wanted Hawlucha to have the better Unburdened Sweeper, and then now that I have another fighting type, I felt like I could get rid of Infernape. And then I would have a potential partner for Tapu Koko that doesn't have so many mutual weaknesses. Hopefully that makes sense. So with that, like, we dropped Infernape, even though it was one of my favorite mons that we were using this season. We dropped Cresselia for Latias as our bulky psychic. Latias has a lot of the same utility that Cresselia does. Like, it has good recovery, it has Healing Wish, but it also has additional utility options like Wish and Defog and things like that Cresselia does not have. It has better offensive stats and better coverage on average, I would say, than Cresselia. It's a lot faster. It's like a good trick user, good scarf user. And just the secondary dragon typing is really nice. Like, I have much better switch-ins now to fire, to water, to grass, whereas I didn't have that as much before. We also dropped Raichu and Sceptile. Like I said, Sceptile was mostly being dropped so we could have an upgrade for a Hawlucha being a better Unburdened Sweeper. We picked up Bronzong and Rapidash with those last 2 slots. So Bronzong I liked because I felt like I wanted a secondary steal all season. Just because Empoleon, yes, it has things that it's good at, but there's lots of things that it struggles with. And not that Bronzong, like Bronzong does share some of those weaknesses, right? Like, they both can be passive if you're not careful. But like, it's just having something that can be a better flying resist, a better fairy resist, I thought was really important. And Bronzong in particular is really nice because it does have Levitate as an ability. So I now have Latias and Bronzong with Levitate to be resistances to ground. I already have Gliscor on my team as a resistance to ground. Hawlucha is a secondary flying type with resistance to ground. So I think on average I'm much less weak to ground just because I have a lot more options that way. And then last but not least, I went with Rapidash. I needed a replacement fire type just because offensive fire I think is very important, and just because in certain matchups like versus Pokemon like Scizor, Escavalier, Ferrothorn, like having that fire typing is really critical. Plus it just applies a lot of pressure on its own. And so I really liked Rapidash because it has a really nice speed tier at 105. It has mainly a good physically attacking stat, but not a horrible special offensive stat as either. It has like a really nice move pool. It gets like low kick, wild charge, things like that. So it's surprisingly versatile. And it was, a fairly cheap pick. And it even gets funny stuff like Baton Pass, so you can use it as a momentum, like a Pokemon that earns momentum. So yeah, I thought that was sort of the best available option for me in the low tiers. So the whole team now looks like this. As you can see, we have I think a more well-rounded roster. Like with Infernape and Tapu Koko, like it was really hard to want to bring something like Muck in the weeks that I bring both of those, and I basically brought them every week, right? Both Koko and Infernape come like every week. Like putting Muck on the team that also has the ground weakness just felt like too much. But now I feel much safer bringing Muck in certain matchups. So that was really nice. Yeah, I think overall the synergy is going to be a lot better. Hawlucha is like Sceptile is my leading kill getter so far this season, but I feel like Hawlucha is just a lot more restrictive on team building than Sceptile, which is really nice. Yeah, overall I think that this team is much improved, and I hope you guys agree. So anyway, now that we are done with all of those notes, I do want to read off the team for our Week 8 battle. So we are going up against the New South Wailmers. The coach for the New South Wailmers for most of the season has been Flying Bird. He has brought the team to a pretty good record of 5-2. For the last 2 weeks of the season, he's being subbed out for Mastodon. Reason being, I think Bird just needs a break from Mons. I don't think he's enjoying it. I don't quite know all the details, but the result is that we have to face Mastodon, who is, I've never really battled him or interacted with him before, but I know that he's been in leagues that I've been affiliated with in the past, such as PMC. He was in the MPL D League. So I guess it's not MPL D League, it's like Minor Pokemon League instead of Major Pokemon League, which is kind of a cool play on words. So he's been around, and he seems like a good battler and a good guy. And I will say, like, scheduling with him, even though he was in Australia, like, he was very good about scheduling, and like, even though like the scheduling kind of occurred at the last minute just due to Bird's decision to kind of quit playing Pokemon in the MPL. Like it was a difficult situation, but Mastodon made it really easy. So I want to give a big shout out to him, just for being a cool dude in general. Let me read off the teams the New South Wailmers have. So they have Garchomp, Mega Medicham, Torntea, Heatran, Snorlax, Shaman, Silvally, Araquanid, Drapion, Gramble, and Rotom Frost. So it's a very scary team. Mega Medicham just has like very few switch-ins in the whole game. I don't think that's I think that's stating the obvious, unless you have like a Cresselia or a Reuniclus or a Mew on your team. Also things like Sableye and Spiritomb probably switch into it pretty well. But even something like Kofag, which is like really bulky and doesn't take any damage from high jump kick, like it still doesn't really appreciate switching in on Psycho Cuts or anything like that. So that's really scary. It just has lots of like general offensive utility. Like Garchomp, Torn, and Heatran are like some of the most well-rounded Mons, period. Just for all the different things that they can do offensively and defensively. Like great hazard control between those three Mons. Torn is a really great Mon for momentum. They all three have really good defensive value just because they have really key resistances and immunities. One of the biggest things that I'm scared of on this team is Snorlax. just because like when I face a team that has a really fat fighting type, normal type, I like to bring my fighting type. But Hawlucha just doesn't really, like, it's not really a bulky fighting type, so it's not like it ever switches in. And by the time Snorlax starts sending up curses, like, it's a little bit too little too late for Hawlucha. So, and Hawlucha in general just doesn't have an amazing matchup this game, just because, like, Rocky Helmet Chomp is annoying. Drapion, like, I guess, High Jump Kick should do a decent chunk to Drapion, but Drapion has, like, really big defenses. Granbull has Intimidate, and it also resists the High Jump Kick. Like, there's priority options on Metacham. Like, they're not going to do a ton because you do get the defense boost from Electric Seed, but just, like, in general, I don't think it's, like, the best matchup for Hawlucha. Maybe I'll catch him over-prepping for it, but who knows. So anyway, that leaves me pretty vulnerable to Snorlax. So a little bit of my prep went into figuring out how best to deal with Snorlax. I have a couple of pretty good offensive Mons in this matchup. I couldn't bring everything that I really wanted in terms of offensive pressure just because of the fear of Snorlax. But let's just hop into the team, and you guys can see sort of how I chose to build here. So I do have a Fizdef Bronzong with Stealth Rocks, 3 attacks. So Bronzong this week... Excuse me, I had to stretch out and itch my back. Bronzong this week is mainly there for as a Garchomp switch-in. Like SD variants of Garchomp could be really scary. And if he's packing like Crunch or something like that, Culper Berry is going to help me survive that. It also helps me deal a little bit better with Drapion, which could potentially be annoying. Like, I'm definitely expecting Drapion as a way to deal with Lottie. But yeah, like, Gyro Ball just does the most amount of damage to, like, Medi and Torn. We do have enough HP and defense investment on this thing, I think, to live an Adamant High Jump Kick from Medi after Rocks. Like, it's crazy. Like, this thing has frickin', like, 116 base defense, and an Adamant Medi, like, still almost one-shots it. Like, it's actually insane. Yeah, so it takes hits from those. It also should be able to take hits relatively well from the likes of Shaman, from Granbull, things like that. So it's just a pretty well-rounded Pokemon this week. Hidden Power Ice, just in case like he's a fat variant of Garchomp with like Sub or something like that. And also just Gyro Ball, it is a contact move, so it does take Rough Skin damage, whereas HP Ice does not. So I think that's pretty nice. Also, as insurance for something like Garchomp, we do have Piloswine with Ice Shard. We're also packing Earthquake, Rock Slide, and Toxic. We're running a very fast set of Pylo this week. So this speed investment allows us to outspeed Zero Speed Heatran, in case he chooses to run that. We can catch the thing off guard with Earthquake. Rock Slide we have here to hit Rotom, because that's kind of the only thing that can deal with Rotom Stabs moves, besides like Araquanid. So it's definitely got pretty good offensive potential. That's why we're bringing it like with Adamant Max Attack. And then Toxic is there, just mainly for like kind of like a Snorlax. Like I don't think he can bring Rest Talk Snorlax versus me because I do have Electric Terrain, which prevents going to sleep. But he could bring easily Curse Recycle. And so with Curse Recycle, that's a major issue. But Toxic should be able to wear that down with enough time. And also it's good for switch-ins like Araquanid or Granbull or anything like that. So overall, I just think Piloswine's pretty nice in the matchup. It's a really great Rotom switch-in. Like Will-O-Wisp is, of course, a thing, and I almost put Facade over Rock Slide for that reason, but screw it, just go with Rock Slide. Next, we have a Trick Scarf Lottie. So this is also a countermeasure for a setup Snorlax, which I'm really scared of. I wanted to bring Life Orb 3 attacks just because Draco plus Psychic plus Earthquake just wrecks his team. It really doesn't have good responses to it. I could have gone with like Ice Beam, Psychic, Earthquake as well. Like Ice Beam hits everything else like just about as hard as Draco does. It hits like Garchomp pretty hard and like Torn pretty hard. And like Draco has the minus special attack drops, but like versus something like Shaman, for example, or Araquanid or Drapion actually is probably the best example. Like Draco just hits so much harder that it seemed worth it to go with Draco. So yeah, Draco, EQ is my two moves. We don't hit Granbull particularly hard with this set, but we should be able to catch an unsuspecting Heatran with the Earthquake if we want. And yeah, so pretty plain set, but it's mostly there for support, but it can also apply a lot of offensive pressure as well. especially if we get rid of his 2 Dragon Resists. So then we have Tapu Koko. We have a pretty bulky set this week with Defog. So Bird's team, as I understand, has relied quite a bit on Sticky Web from Araquanid, and so I don't want to get caught off guard by that and not have any sort of form of hazard removal on the team. U-Turn is there for obviously momentum. Thunderbolt's there as the most powerful move that Tapu Koko has. And then Nature's Madness with Farium Z is kind of a fun option. So Nature's Madness is just really nice for a lot of the things that he might otherwise switch into Tapu Koko, like Shaman, a bulky Heatran, Assault Vest Drapion, Rotom, if it's Spadaf, or things like that. And just hit it for a lot of damage. Like, being able to do 50 is just so nice. And then, we are in theory left without like a good way to hit something like Garchomp or Medi on this set. And that's where the Farium Z comes in handy. So with Farium Z, instead of the like Tapu Z crystal, it turns Nature's Madness into Twinkle Tackle instead of Guardian of Alola. So we have a one-time option to just blow back Garchomp or Medicham. I think the special attack investment I have on this thing is enough to one-shot either of those with Twinkle Tackle. And then we just put the rest into bulk and put enough speed on here for Torn. So, yeah, he has lots of good responses to Koko, but hopefully we can really pressure them with Nature's Madness. Like a Shaman that has Synthesis is going to be forced to Synthesis pretty much anytime it comes in on this thing if I click Nature's Madness, so that's pretty nice. Next we have, I think, probably the best offensive Mon in this matchup, which is Rapidash. So, you just look at this coverage, and you look at his team, and there's very little that switches into this. Like, the only thing really is Garchomp that wants to switch into this. I almost put HP Ice instead of Morning Sun on Rapidash, but I like the option of having Morning Sun to help get recovery after I've blown through a lot of recoil, like with the combination of Flare Blitz and Life Orb and stuff like that. But yeah, like besides Chomp, his other fire resists are Heatran, which takes a ton from Low Kick, and Wild Charge, which Wild Charge hits his other fire resist, which is Araquanid. And Low Kick also hits up another potential fire resist in Snorlax. So really nice coverage this week. Flare Blitz on its own, just it one-shots Medi after rocks. It kills Shaman. It does 50% to Fizz Def Granbull. It's just a really scary mon in the matchup. And it's not really a Heatran switch in, but we do have Flash Fire, so that's kind of nice if we need it. But yeah, obviously we don't really take Earth Power at all on this Rapidash. It doesn't really have good base HP or anything like that. Then last but not least, I think this is, the main win con this week, and that is a SD Roost Gliscor. So we have enough speed on this thing for Adamant Medicham. He shouldn't bring Jolly. Jolly is only to outspeed Gliscor, and I think he's going to overlook the option of a fast Gliscor. Otherwise, unless he has Icy Wind on Torn T or something like that, or he has a Scarf Rotom, he shouldn't be able to break through this set. If we get to +2, we have a really good matchup versus everything on the team. A Fizz Def Shaman takes 50 from Facade, so it gets 2-shot. Earthquake obliterates a lot of things. Araquanid takes 75% from Facade. So I think this is a pretty sneaky win con this game. I almost went with Knockoff over Facade just as another safety net for Recycle Snorlax, because if you can knock off the berry, then that means it can no longer recycle. But I wanted the extra power of Facade to be able to break through Shaman and Araquanid. I thought that was really worth it. That's why I decided to go with the Trick Scarf on Lottie, is because I didn't have the extra precaution since I wanted to make my Gliscor set just a little bit more powerful. Yeah, that's the main win con. I think Rapidash is also a pretty good win con as well. We're just gonna have to cross our fingers and hope that we can win this matchup. We did win our matchup last week, so we were 3-4. But going up against this 5-2 New South Wailmers team is pretty intimidating. We basically have to win out and get help in order to make playoffs. So it really starts just with trying to take it one match at a time and try and get this game in the bag. So let's flip to the battle now, where Mastodon has brought Shaman, Torn T, Mega Medicham, Garchomp, Rotom, Frost, and Granbull. I don't know if I call it a major surprise, but it is a major relief not to see the Snorlax It's a little bit of a bummer because I feel like I could have brought the offensive Life Orb Lottie that I had wanted if I had known that he wasn't going to bring the Snorlax, but Trick Scarf is still not useless in this game. Being able to trick onto like Shaman or Gramble could still potentially be pretty nifty, as those are probably his best 2 responses to Lottie. Shaman, seeing that there, definitely makes sense that that's going to be like a potential Tapu Koko response. Garchomp can kind of be, but like obviously he doesn't really want to take the Stab Fairy move. Maybe if he's like Roselli Berry, he could kind of be a check to Koko. Like the nice thing about Garchomp versus Shaman is that Garchomp can one-shot Tapu Koko, whereas Shaman cannot. Like if I'm like a Calm Mind variant and he wants to just be like max Spadaf with no attack investment and just use Earth Power, like that variant's never going to beat Tapu Koko. Medi makes sense, Torn makes sense. Rotom, I think maybe I was a little bit surprised by, but just like its stabs obviously are really nice in general. He could have brought like Araquanid as like a water type to hit Gliscor, because Gliscor is a little bit of a problem otherwise. But like yeah, like Rotom's just a little bit safer at dealing with Gliscor than Araquanid is. Like I could bring like a weird set with like Flying Stab, like Acrobatics or Aerial Ace or something like that. And then the Gramble makes sense. Like it's his best Hawlucha response. It can deal with Lottie relatively well, and just like the physical attackers on my team are annoyed by Gramble. So in terms of leads, I'm just gonna lead Tapu Koko. Like it's tough to say what else I want to lead with. I guess I could have led with Bronzong to get up rocks right away. But I just felt like getting Koko and assessing the situation was a little bit of a better play. And so I'm gonna click that, you know, Tapu Koko, and probably just click U-turn with whatever he decides to lead with. And without further ado, we are now like 25 minutes into this video, 22 minutes, and we're just now going to hit play and get on into this battle. So good luck, have fun, Mastodon. We're going to see how this goes. It's definitely going to be a tough one. And yeah, you see him issuing that challenge. And he is going to see my Tapu Koko come out here. And he's going to lead with his Shaman, his Nails OU. And so he probably led that expecting my Tapu Koko lead. I'm just going to U-turn and probably go into Bronzong. Or into Lottie. I don't recall which one I made, but both of them are perfectly good options here because they potentially are immune to the Earth Power that he might throw off, or if he chooses just to go for Seed Flare, I resist that as well. But he decides to go into Granbull. I don't know if he was like expecting me to have like Wild Charge or Brave Bird or something like that. Like if I did have Brave Bird, like going into Granbull to scout for that is a pretty good play. And there's not a good shot that I'm going to click T-Bolt there versus the Shaman. So like I can kind of understand where he's going with that. But as played, I do get the opportunity to get some momentum and go into my Bronzong and potentially threaten this thing with Stab super effective coverage as I go for my rocks. You know, I was thinking maybe he would switch out, but he actually goes for the Super Fang, which is a really nice tech, and it's really annoying because it really limits the longevity of my Bronzong here. And it was relatively safe from his perspective as well. Like, I don't do that much with Gyro Ball because Granbull is so naturally slow. So, yeah, it just does not take much damage. I go for the Gyro Ball versus the Shaman here, and it does, like maybe 25 or 30% or so. It's a little bit hard to gauge the damage on Wi-Fi, but, you know, I could believe that maybe has a little bit of Fizdef investment, but again, it's really, really hard to say. But I go into my Lottie just because my Bronzong is weakened and I don't really want it to take additional damage if I can help it. And he does throw off the Leech Seed, which is pretty annoying. It's going to get him up to a pretty comfortable amount of HP. And my Lottie is going to get a little bit whittled here. That part's not as big of a deal. I am going to throw off the Trick here because if I can trick the Shaman, that would be pretty nice. Or if he wants to go into his Granbull, I'm happy to trick a Scarf onto that thing to make it pretty useless. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. I'm able to take some lefties off of this Granbull and get some leftovers onto my Latias. That's going to really help right now because I am taking the extra damage from the Leech Seed, so that's especially annoying. Yeah, the fact that this thing now can no longer switch up moves is really nice. I think I try and go into Gliscor here. Just because it's an opportunity for me to get off my Toxic Orb. I might go into Bronzong. No, I do go into Gliscor here. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to proc my Toxic Orb, because if he is something like Rotom, Will-O-Wisp Rotom, I want to be able to use this thing to, well, sorry, I guess this thing isn't really like a switch in to like Will-O-Wisp Rotom, but like I don't have to worry about Wisp, I guess, if I'm predicting a Volt Switch or something like that. But he makes a double of his own into Medi, which is not a very good move, or not a very good situation for me. This thing almost definitely has Ice Punch, so I'm not going to let him kill my Gliscor when it's potentially going to be my late game win con. And so I'm going to just go ahead and go on into my Bronzong and sack it off. He does go for the Ice Punch and get the crit and the freeze, which is kind of unfortunate. But you'll see it actually ends up working out in my favor. I think if I hadn't gotten frozen, he would have just stayed in and gone for the fighting move versus me. But because I do get frozen, he makes the call to go into his Torn as I just click Gyro Ball, and I immediately thaw, and I get off a really fat Gyro Ball versus this thing, almost neck kicking out in one hit. It was definitely not in my favor to kill, so I'm not really upset about that. But he goes for the Defog here, so it's clear that he wanted to try and exploit the Bronzong while it was frozen, try and get off a Defog. But because I do immediately thaw, I'm able to punish him for doing that. So like I said, like that sequence of plays wouldn't have necessarily happened if I had gotten frozen, or sorry, if I had not gotten frozen. But as played, I get rid of his Torn. I don't keep up Rocks, which is a little bit annoying. And now he's going to go back into his Medicham and go for the combination of Fake Out plus Ice Punch to take out my Bronzong. It makes sense. You don't want to risk potentially getting a high jump kick miss or anything like that. Excuse me. Now I'm going to go into my Tapu Koko, and I'm going to threaten the Dazzling Gleam, which of course I do not have. And I'm just going to simply click U-turn as he brings in his Nails OU, which is his Shaman. And so this gives me a nice chance to get some momentum as he brings in his Shaman. Like having the Rocks up versus this potential Shaman, which is going to be coming in almost anytime my Koko comes in, would have been really nice. But at least I don't have to worry about offensive Torn, which could potentially be annoying. I go into my Rapidash here because obviously it's going to threaten out his Shaman here. I'm actually expecting the Garchomp to come in. And so I make a double into my Lottie, trying to expect that, because then I can threaten it with a Dragon move, assuming that it is not a Scarf variant. But he's actually going to go into his Gramble instead on my Rapidash. And like getting off the Intimidate on the Rapidash does make sense, but Gramble definitely does not take 2 Flare Blitzes. Maybe like he knows that this thing is now it's got the Choice Scarf on it, so its usefulness is relatively little. So he doesn't mind just kind of like stacking it to the Rapidash. Anyway, what ends up happening is that I go into my Gliscor, and he makes a nice play and goes for the Ice Punch. He could have gone for like the Play Rough to hit the Lottie, but Ice Punch also hits Lottie relatively hard. So from his perspective, it was a nice, safe play to make, while also potentially punishing a major move on my part. So I'm going to make another switch into Rapidash, because if he wants to go for Ice Punch, it's not really going to do a lot of damage to Rapidash since I do resist. And he goes into his Rotom. I go for Flare Blitz because he's either going to switch out, or I was expecting him to switch out, but then he reveals the Scarf. And so it's good to know that Rotom is Scarf now. I have to play around that a little bit differently. But Flare Blitz is obviously going to wreck that Rotom, so I am expecting him just to hard switch, and so that's why I just go ahead and click the Flare Blitz there. He ends up going back into the Gramble. I crit it, which is I guess a little bit annoying for him, but doesn't matter too much because it didn't kill him, right? But now he goes for the Earthquake versus the Rapidash to go into Piloswine. I guess I could have gone into like Gliscor again, but in case he wanted to go for like Ice Punch or some sort of crazy play, I felt like Piloswine was a little bit of a more safe play. So versus my Piloswine, I am expecting the Shaman to come in, so I make another aggressive switch into Rapidash, trying to apply some offensive pressure. But he ends up switching into the Rotom instead, which makes sense as well. Like, Rotom also doesn't really care about any of the stab moves from Piloswine. But I'm going to go back into Pilo, and he's going to go for Volt Switch. I do I'm obviously immune to that. He's going to switch on out. I am going to make another switch of my own. I think this is 3 switches in a row. Maybe it's 4. This is not the 4th, and there's one other switch that I make. No, it's just going to Coco here. I think I just click T-Bolt here now. Because, there's a non-zero chance that he just sacks off the Gramble. I don't really want to over-predict in U-turn. And, it should still do a little bit of damage to Shaman, or at least force it to go for Synthesis. So I do throw off that Thunderbolt. And again, this is where, it's tough. I don't know exactly how much damage that did. I think it did maybe around 20% or so. But I do get the Para, which is annoying for him. Because, if he wants to go for some sort of move like Synthesis, there's a chance that he's not able to get that off. So he's going to elect to switch out and cure his paralysis before he tries to bring it back in. And I'm just going to go for a U-turn as he intimidates me with the Granbull, and I'm going to switch back out once again. At this point, I don't recall what I go into. It's the Gliscor. Yeah, so Gliscor is a good play here. Piloswine is not going to be able to kill this thing. Lottie isn't going to be able to kill this thing. Rapidash doesn't have enough HP to kill this thing. So Gliscor overall is a pretty safe play. I can just throw off a Facade, knowing that it will kill the Gramble there, while also getting off a pretty good chunk of damage versus almost anything else that he brings in. Like this Rotom, for example, he brought it in probably expecting the EQ. But I do a pretty good chunk of damage to it, 45% with the Facade, so I'm really happy about that. And so I go into my Piloswine once again as he throws off a Blizzard versus my Gliscor. At this point, I'm not too scared of this thing having Will-O-Wisp, so Piloswine is just pretty much a hard counter to it. Unfortunately for me, I don't have a bulky Piloswine this week, so I'm taking a decent amount of damage, probably a little bit more than 20% damage from the Rock Slide. Sorry, or 25% damage from the Blizzard. I do throw off the Rock Slide to hit the Rotom in case he wanted to spam Blizzard. But I knew that the combination of Rock Slide plus Ice Shard would be able to take out this Gramble, so it felt like a pretty safe play overall. We do take out that Gramble, but now it puts me in a bad position because he can just go once again straight on into his Medicham. And so this is a hard turn because I was not sure what move I wanted to... I have to basically sack a Pokemon, and I have to decide what Pokemon I'm going to sack. And to me, Gliscor sort of felt like the LVP at this point. My main path to victory that I'm imagining right now is just spamming Dracos with Lottie, because he doesn't have Heatran on the squad, and I just killed his only other Dragon Resist being the Granbull. So I don't need an SD set in order to win necessarily. And I can actually get off a little bit of damage onto this Medicham because, like I said, I am expecting it to be Adamant, and it does turn out that it is Adamant. I'm able to get off a nice chunk of damage with the Facade, 55% damage with Facade, which is really nice. So yeah, basically I'm just have to figure out I have to get Lottie in on multiple turns, in multiple situations, and just drop Dracos, because Dracos. It kills Garchomp, it kills Medi at the range of HP that it's at, it kills Rotom upon switch in. So that's kind of my main play here. I scare out the Medicham, and I just go for a Thunderbolt versus this incoming Shaman. And this is probably a mistake. I throw off the Twinkle Tackle here. It's hard to tell exactly what range of HP that he's at, and it's hard to tell what exactly his spread is, if he's more Fizz-Def or if he's more Spadef. But I figure I'll take the chance to try and kill it with the Twinkle Tackle. Because I could do potentially 30% minimum if he's just max HP, and it kind of looks like he's around that range. Turns out he's able to live that relatively comfortably. And he did tell me that he went for Synthesis on that turn. But unfortunately for him, he gets fully paralyzed. So the first time he brought this thing in on a Thunderbolt, I got the paralysis. The second time, he gets the paralysis. I get the paralysis as well, and then he decides to go for the Synthesis on that turn rather than trying to bring it in once again, which makes sense. The Shaman's at such a low range of HP, you kind of have to Synthesis. You can't bring it in twice on Tapu Koko anymore. But I get rewarded for a kind of bad play as he gets fully paralyzed, and I'm able to take him out with the U-turn at that point. So I go into my Piloswine because I know that it's going to bait in the Medicham. And so, basically, anytime that this Medicham comes in, I can sack something and then go into my Lottie and drop a Draco and get a kill. And so, it's 4-3 at this point. I have 4 Mons, he has 3. so I can like sack 3 Pokemon in order to kill 3 of his Pokemon. So like because of how that played out with the Shaman, I feel like I'm in a pretty good position to get the win with Lottie if I so choose. It's just going to be a question of trying to play around the Rotom, because like that's kind of the main thing that can beat the Lottie, because it does have obviously Choice Scarf Blizzard to one-shot Lottie. So as long as I keep my Piloswine around, I think I can deal with that relatively well. So he goes into his Garchomp. He actually turns out to be a Focus Sash Garchomp, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. Maybe that was his means of beating Hawlucha, is just having Focus Sash. That way he can get off 1 big hit on Hawlucha, and he can get off 2 rounds of Rough Skin versus it. In any case, I'm able to take it out with the Earthquake. That was probably a little bit of a mistake in hindsight. I probably should have gone for another Draco. I wanted to have something that was 100% accurate, but like if he had gone into Rotom there, that would have been a really horrible situation for me. But anyway, the Medicham does come in. The Draco might have killed the Medi at that point, but I wasn't willing to risk it when I have a sack in the back being Tapu Koko. So he does go for Ice Punch versus the Tapu Koko, and I think in this situation I just go for T-Bolts. U-turn might have been a nice play, but like he only has 2 Mons left. Like I thought maybe he would. It's kind of tough. I guess like him preserving Medicham is his only way of beating the Piloswine. So like going into Rotom makes sense there to some respect. But like from his end, like maybe he just sacks that and then just clicks Scarf Blizzard for the win, and hopes that he can 2-shot my Piloswine. I have shown the Rock Slide, but maybe he doesn't think Rock Slide kills from that range or something like that. I'm not sure. I get rewarded again for like a sort of questionable play because he misses the Blizzard on my excuse me. I got a really dry throat right now. He misses the Blizzard on my Tapu Koko, which allows me to take out his Rotom, which puts him in a really crappy spot because now he's left with just the Medicham. I have my Lottie here, and I can kill this thing straight up with a Draco, but because Draco has a chance to miss, I decided to make the safer play and take the lower differential. Earthquake plus Ice Shard does kill this thing, and an Adamant Bullet Punch has no chance to kill my Piloswine. So I decided to take the safe route out there and try and get the 1-0 dub. It just is going to depend on whether or not he crits my Piloswine with the Bullet Punch or not. Sorry, I had to take a swig of water. So the Piloswine comes out. Is he going to land the crit? He clicks the Bullet Punch here. It's going to connect, of course. And are we going to survive? And we do. Pretty comfortably, I might add. We're able to throw off that Ice Shard, kill the Medicham, and it's looking like good game. I guess Earthquake would have been the overall better play rather than Ice Shard in that situation. But I guess just in case he like clicked High Jump Kick or something, it was worth it just to go for Ice Shard just in case. But yeah, we're going to get a 1-0 dub in this game. And yeah, I think it's the main turn that really hurt him was the full paralysis on that Shaman. If he could have gotten that Shaman up to full HP, I'm not sure how I would have dealt with it. I guess I just get it to like I try and like spam Nature's Madness versus that thing with my Tapu Koko just to try and keep it as low as possible. Maybe I can like stall it out of Synthesis or something like that, and then come in with the Lottie and get off a Draco. But like Draco to like a Spadef Shaman isn't doing that much. I could Toxic it with Piloswine, but it has Natural Cure. He can just switch out. Plus, obviously, he has Seed Flare, which is going to kill my Piloswine. So, yeah, like, like he would have won the game if he could have kept Shaman. The turn with the Rotom missing with Blizzard was not as unfortunate, because I still think I could have won from there. It just could have come down to a little bit of a prediction. Like, so if I go into Piloswine after Koko goes down, he either is going to stay in and just spam Blizzard until he dies, or he's going to go into his Medicham on my anticipated Rock Slide. So it's like, do I click Rock Slide or do I anticipate the Medicham, switch into click EQ? I think I would have clicked EQ, just because like Rotom had a decent chance not to 2-shot my Piloswine. And like from his perspective, like Medicham can't win as long as I have my Lottie around. Whereas like Rotom can kind of win. Like he just needs to potentially, like he can kill my Lottie in one shot, and he just needs to potentially somehow two-shot the Piloswine. So, yeah, like, I think his play in that situation would have been to go into Medicham, and so I would have clicked EQ there. But obviously, like, all of the hacks in our favor, like, kind of made it so we didn't have to worry about those precarious scenarios. So definitely lucky to win this game. I don't think there's really any way around it. It is going to improve our record to 4-4. And sorry, just one other funny note about the match. That Medicham literally got 5 kills. If he had a crit, the Piloswine would have gotten all 6 kills in the game, which would have been freaking crazy. But luckily that didn't happen. We did escape with the win. But now we are going to go into week number 9, and we're going to be going up against Automatic, who's a good pal. He's one of the admins for UBL, which is the league we won the championship for last year. So it'll be our first time battling, so I'm looking forward to it. He's the one who he's founded the Draft League website, which has become a really useful tool for a lot of leagues in terms of drafting and prepping and things like that. I'll put a link down in the description. It's draft-league.nl. It's a really good place if you want to start your own league and do online drafts and stuff like that. So it's really nice. We need to win this game, and then we also need Fizzle to lose his game if we are going to make playoffs, because he's 4-4, I'm 4-4. I guess it's a spoiler for the Week 8 results. But if he wins, he's going to have a better differential than me. I don't think there's any way that we can both win and I end up with a better differential than him. So we're going to cross our fingers and hope that we can make that work. You know, I would feel bad, like, hacking out Mastodon, and then not being able to make playoffs afterwards. Like, I feel like that's the only way to, like, honor his sacrifices, so to speak. Like, he got sacrificed to the Hacks gods so I could potentially make playoffs. Like, I think that would be a cool way to spin it. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, if you're excited for that match, it's basically a win and you're in, or go home game. If you're excited for that sort of hype, make sure you drop a like down the video below and leave a sub, so that way you can catch my next MPL game and you can stay updated on all my other latest and greatest Pokemon and gaming content. Thank you guys for watching, and until the next time, I will see you guys later.